Sicario, Day of the Soldado is the sequel to the 2015 film Sicario, directed by Denis Villeneuve. This one is not directed by him, however, it's directed by Stefano Sollima. And in this film, the Mexican cartels across the border are now being put on the same watch list that terrorists are put on. And because of this, Josh Brolin's character Matt Graver now has more assets, more supplies to his advantage to get a war started between opposing cartels, and he needs Alejandro's help, played by Benicio del Toro, to help stir this up. I was very excited for this movie, even though Denis Villeneuve is not coming back, which was definitely a worry of mine. Roger Deakins, the cinematographer, wasn't coming back. I was still very excited to see this film because it had the same screenwriter, Taylor Sheridan, who wrote Hell or High Water, wrote and directed Wind River, a film that I think is excellent too. So the fact that they got a new director who I basically haven't heard much of at all, I wasn't really that concerned because Taylor Sheridan was penning the script and I couldn't wait to see what he was cooking up. In interviews, he was talking about how the darkness in this film is going to make the first Sicario look like a comedy or something like that. That definitely had me curious. And I thought this film was fantastic. Taylor Sheridan, you are the man, dude. Seriously, this guy knows how to write very intriguing, very investing screenplays that had me hooked ever since the beginning. The opening 10 minutes of this film is some of the most intense stuff I've seen recently, and that's just 10 minutes. And that's a great compliment to what Taylor Sheridan did with the script and also what Stefano did as a director. He had some pretty big shoes to fill because Denis is kind of killing it lately with a bunch of his films, so how are you going to compare? And I think it's very easy to say that obviously the first Sicario is the better film, just that's kind of obvious, but Stefano does a pretty excellent job here really capturing the same tone, the same intensity that the first Sicario had. The moments of action in this film, they're so chilling. You just sit there and you're not really being entertained by it like you would be some other dumb action movie. This is a movie that has action sequences, but it's portrayed in a very realistic, very grim kind of way. And just because Benicio del Toro is doing something pretty awesome with his gun in the trailer, that doesn't mean they turn this into an action movie and they're trying to make it an action franchise now. They're still keeping to what made the first Sicario film so great, which was capturing that realism that probably this stuff has happened before. Maybe it's happening right now. And going into this film, I heard from a couple critics that this film had that at first, but then it kind of lost it in the second half of the movie. They didn't really like it and they thought it was really disappointing, and I simply just don't understand that. I was watching this movie and I was like, yeah, this has the same kind of tone consistently throughout the film. It all feels realistic, and the anything can happen aspect of the screenplay definitely made it seem like this isn't just a typical Hollywood movie. This is trying to be as realistic and surprising as it possibly can be, and I love that. Once again, Taylor Sheridan, I can't praise him enough for his screenplays, and I just don't really see where a lot of the complaints are coming from with this movie. And I'm sure I must be in some minority, because it seems like collectively people are agreeing that it's just okay or something like that, but I love this movie. Benicio del Toro comes back as Alejandro, and I love this character from the last one because they did not want to play it safe with that guy. They made him do something at the end of the first Sicario. If you haven't seen it, I won't spoil it, but he did something pretty awful. But at the same time, within that character, it makes sense, and it makes the character more intriguing. And in this film, they bring him back and they continue the storyline that was presented in the last Sicario film, and I still really enjoyed his character because, once again, they bring back that moral side of him. But he's still willing to do whatever it takes, no matter how violent or how cruel it may be, to get what needs to be done. Josh Brolin back as Matt Graver, who is also very good here. I think I might like him a little bit more in this film than I did in the first Sicario, and I loved him in the first Sicario. But with his introduction scene, where he's just threatening this guy he's interrogating, hey, I can blow up your house if you don't tell me what I need to know, and you can tell instantly, this is a man you should not take lightly. He's dead serious. But the interrogatee doesn't really believe that, and so things kind of progress from there. And it's nothing really too intense. It's not like Josh Brolin is beating the crap out of this guy he's interrogating, but it's just the psychological mind games that Josh Brolin was able to play with this guy, and seeing how his character further progresses throughout the film. He's much more intense, and I think a little bit better utilized in this one than the last one, and I will repeat, loved him in the last Sicario, but in this one it felt like they gave him a little bit more to do, and it felt like certain things weighed on him a little bit more, and that's what I really liked about him in this one. Catherine Keener also shows up in this movie for a little bit. It's a small part, but her role is very necessary because she's bringing up different viewpoints that other characters that we're following aren't really necessarily thinking of, and I thought she was a good addition. But I really want to give two shout-outs to these two young actors in this film. One of them is Elijah Rodriguez, who plays the character of Miguel. His storyline is introduced earlier on in the movie, where he's kind of getting bred into this cartel lifestyle, and I thought his performance was very good. It's very much so subdued, and it's not like he has any like big freak out like Oscar-worthy moments or anything. It's just how the actor portrayed this very subdued character. You can tell there's a lot going on up here, but he's just not very vocal about it, but you can still see it in his eyes, like he's constantly thinking about stuff. I also want to mention Isabella Moner. She just came off of Transformers the last night, and I thought that movie was garbage. She wasn't like awful in it or anything, but she wasn't that great, and the character wasn't that good. But in this movie, she's able to stand her own against the people like Brolin and Del Toro. Like, the fact that a young actress like that is able to do that is outstanding to me. Like, she has some really great moments in this film, acting-wise, and she's being cast as Dora next. I think that's what's happening. She's gonna be Dora in the Michael Bay-produced Dora movie, like, whatever. I hope after that movie comes out, she still has some, like, more roles like Sicario here, more dramatic roles or something like that, because she has a lot of talent, and I think if you put her in something like Transformers and then Dora, if that's what you're gonna do with your career, I don't think that's gonna work at all, because she's far too talented. It's proven in this film. So I thought the acting was very excellent. The characters were all very well developed in this film. I also thought the direction by Stefano was very strong here. It's very easy for people to just say, well, it's not as good as Denis, or the cinematography isn't as good as Roger Deakins. You can tell it's not him. Like, okay, but this movie doesn't have those two again, so these guys are doing what they can to make it as good as possible still, and it works excellently in my opinion. Sure, the cinematography isn't like Deakins level, but it's still very good, and it gets you really invested in the world that you're seeing, and Stefano's direction here also helps with that. So to have people just kind of dismiss it as, it's not Denis Villeneuve, so it's not as great, like, that's kind of downplaying what Stefano actually was able to do with this film. And I wanted to mention the third act in this movie because there are people that are saying, like, Sicario 2, like, it changes what kind of movie it is, like, in the middle. I didn't really feel that way because, sure, certain things are starting to change plot-wise, but it managed to have the same tone, and it was consistent with how dark everything was, so I was still fully invested with the screenplay. I thought the characters were still really excellent, and I was really intrigued to see where the story was going because, like I said earlier, unpredictability is present here. And with the ending of the film, I can agree a little bit on that. The ending of the film is pretty much my only flaw with this movie because it is a cliffhanger and it is setting up another Sicario film. And that does kind of betray what the first Sicario was all about, which was just this grounded, very realistic portrayal of what actually goes down, a little bit more of a simple story that's elevated a lot by direction and acting, and you just follow this character who's naive to this whole thing, and she's embracing this situation for the first time. And in this film, they are definitely trying to gear it up as a two-parter, this one being like a part one, and then 3 will be the part 2 to this story, and they're trying to make it more of a franchise piece with that. And though that does kind of betray what made the first Sicario so special, I still want to see where the story unfolds from here. I still am invested with these characters, and they all end in a place that makes me wonder, where could they possibly be going from here? I really want to know. And I was still really taken in by the story already present. I loved the tone. I loved what Stefano did behind the camera. I love the cinematography. The score is also very good once again with this film. And with all this dark stuff going on too, there still manages to be here and there moments of levity, moments of laughs that aren't distracting at all, but they are placed in, and it feels somewhat natural with the characters that you're watching. So I thought this movie was kind of excellent, and I'm probably in the minority. I'm sure there's a ton of other reviews coming out as soon as I'm filming this saying, yeah, it's good, but it's not as good as the first Sicario, and I'm gonna be like one of the only people who actually says this is excellent and almost as good as that first Sicario film. I'm gonna give Sicario Dave the Soldado an A. I thought the action sequences were still terrific, very intense, very brutal. The acting is spot on, superb. The story is so investing, and it only ends in a place that makes me want to see where else the story unfolds. Sicario 3, please don't take 3 years to come out like this one did in between the first Sicario. Like, take 2 years, please. Like, I want to see this story as soon as possible. Taylor Sheridan, you are the man. But if you've seen Sicario Day of the Soldado, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.